Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Dr. Safiya Anjum from the Department of Physics, Lahore College for Women, University, Lahore. From the course of characterization techniques, today we will study X-ray powder method. With the help of different techniques, we can determine the unknown crystal. We can determine an unknown crystal shape and size by the measurement of the diffraction by the direction of diffracted beams. There are many methods of diffraction methods. Diffraction occurs whenever the Bragg's law is satisfied. This is the basic concept of the diffraction. We have studied before that the planes which have satisfied the Bragg's law can be diffracted. There are three different diffraction methods are available. One is the Liu method, the other is the rotating crystal method, and the third one is the powder method. In the Liu method, the lambda or the wavelength of the incident beam is variable, where the theta and the position is fixed. But in the rotating crystal method, the wavelength is fixed, as we have studied before that the characteristics radiation or the characteristics X-rays have a specific wavelength, that is K alpha radiation, K alpha wavelength. So for the investigation of the crystal structure, it is necessary to have the monochromatic wavelength or the fixed wavelength, but the variable is theta is or the position is variable. Now in powder method, we also use the fixed wavelength or the monochromatic wavelength, whereas the position is variable. Wavelength is fixed and the position is variable. So we will study the powder method in detail. So here we can classify these three methods like this. With the help of Liu method, we can determine the orientation of the single crystal, and we have used the polychromatic beam with the fixed angle, where in the rotating crystal we can measure the lattice constant of the single crystal, lattice constant like A, B and C by using the monochromatic beam wavelength with the variable angles. Whereas in the powder method, we can also determine the lattice parameter A, B and C by using the polycrystalline powder, which has more than one crystals, whereas in rotating method we are just using the single crystal. So it is very important point that the powder method is very feasible because here we can use the powder of the polycrystalline powder. We can use the polycrystalline powder which has more than one planes. So it is very difficult in real life to get the single crystal powder or the single crystal substrate. So in real life we are usually found our sample as a polycrystal. So this powder method is very useful to investigate the polycrystalline powder by using the monochromatic beam having the single wavelength with the variable angle. So now we are going to study X-ray powder diffraction in detail. X-ray powder diffraction is a rapid analytical technique primarily used for the face identification. First of all, whenever we have prepared samples, we should want to know the face identification. What is the face contained by our sample? Is this a cubic, hexagonal, wurtzite structure or rhombohedral, any other? So the face identification is very important of the crystalline material and can provide the information on unit cell dimension, because unit cell dimension have the lattice constant A, B and C. So the identification of the phase can be obtained on the basis of the unit cell dimensions. In other method, a single crystal is required. So it is very important we can measure the polycrystalline sample or the phase identification from X-ray powder diffraction, but in other methods we cannot do the phase analysis of the polycrystalline method, polycrystalline crystal. So in other words, this is the lack of information from the other method, that the other method is restricted on the single crystal and it requires the size is much larger than the microscopic dimensions. So the size of the crystal should be large as compared to the size which we have used in X-ray powder. However, in powder method, as little as 1 milligram of the material is sufficient for the study. It is the advantage of this technique, powder method, that we need or we require a very small amount of the material to investigate their phase identification and the unit cell dimensions. So here is some history of X-ray powder diffraction. Maxwell Liu 1912 discovered the crystalline substances act as three-dimensional diffraction grating for X-ray wavelengths similar to the spacing of the planes in a crystal lattice. So X-ray wavelength which we have used in the X-ray powder is the K-alpha radiation, and K-alpha radiation X-rays have similarity with the plane spacing. That's why the diffraction, we can observe the diffraction from the crystal planes. So there is a compatibility of the X-ray wavelength with the spacing of the planes in a crystal lattice. The method, the powder method, was advised independently by the Debye and Scherrer in Germany and Hall in America at about the same time. Both scientists are working at the same time on the powder method, and they have successfully investigated the crystal structure at different locations. X-ray diffraction is based on the constructive interference of the monochromatic X-rays and the crystalline samples. When the monochromatic X-rays fall on the planes of the crystal, they are diffracted, and the diffractions depends either the both beams, the diffracted beams are behave constructively or destructively. If the beams are behave as a constructive interference, then we can get the information from the crystal. So if they are destructive interference, then there is no information obtained from the crystal. These X-rays are generated by the cathode tube, filtered to produce the monochromatic radiations, and collimated to concentrate and directed towards the sample. The X-rays which have generated from the cathode tube, as we have studied before. So there are many wavelengths. These X-rays which have generated from the X-ray tubes have associated with many wavelengths. So we have to filter these wavelengths to monochromatic radiations by using different filters, and then collimate to concentrate them to fall on the sample for the investigation of the crystal structure. In powder method, usually we are using very fine powder, and it is placed in a beam of monochromatic X-rays for the investigation of their crystal and HKL, all the parameters related with the crystal structure. Each powder is acting as a crystal. Each very fine powder is acting as a crystal or the assemblage of the smaller crystal. Orientate these Obviously, all the particles in the powder samples are oriented in the random direction with the incident beam. Some crystals are oriented in 100 planes, some oriented in 110 planes, etc. And other may be in 1110, 104 planes, and other types of the planes which are present in the sample. The results is that every set of lattice planes will be capable of reflection. For example, if this is the incident beam and it falls on the sample, and the sample is, when the sample is rotated in different direction, if it is a single crystal, then what happen? All the diffraction from the different planes is emitted, and they form a whole circle or pie in which all type of the diffraction, all the planes are contributed from these samples, or the planes are present in the samples are contributed in the diffraction, and the diffraction is in all the direction, and it accumulate all the diffraction and will give the result. Consider one HKL plane, one or more crystal by chance so oriented that their HKL planes make the correct Bragg's angle for the reflection. Yes, one or more crystal or more than this can by chance have a same orientation and they diffracted in the same angle. If the planes rotated about the incident beam in such a way that keeps the theta constant, then the reflected beams will travel over the surface of the cone. Yes, like this. The reflected beam is lie on the surface of the cone, axis of the cone coinciding with the transmitted beam. Yes, the rotation does not occur in the powder method. There is no need to rotate the powder method because the powder consists of many tiny crystals, and each crystal has a different orientation. Due to these different orientations, we found all type of the crystal oriented in different directions, so there is no need to rotate the powder itself. So in the presence of a large number of the crystal particles having all possible orientation is equivalent to this rotation, so there is no need to rotate the samples because already all the crystal particles having different orientation and different type of the possible orientations. In short, if the powder specimen is used instead of the single crystal, then there is no need to rotate the specimen, because in the single crystals we want to expose that crystal in all directions, so there is a need to rotate the single crystal. But as we know that a powder is a polycrystalline, and powder has many number of the particles, and each particle is oriented in the different direction, so there is no need to rotate the powder itself. So because there will always be some crystal at an orientation for which the diffraction is permitted. Here a monochromatic X-ray beam is incident on the powder or the polycrystalline sample. Because powder contains many crystals, and that's why it is called the polycrystalline sample. This method is useful for the samples that are difficult to obtain in single crystal. Usually in real life we are dealing with the polycrystalline samples, and it is quite difficult to obtain the single crystal from that polycrystalline samples. Debye-Scherer's method shown in the next figure. Here we can see that a strip of the film is wounded in a cylindrical form around this sample, and there is a hole for the incoming radiation, and this incoming radiation or X-rays exposed that sample and then the transmitted X-rays is leaving that cylinder by the other hole on the other side of the film. And as it is diffracted in the different direction, it making a cone, and when we roll off that film like this, flatten the film, then we can see there are many diffraction lines. This is the beam entering hole, and this is the beam leaving hole or exiting hole, and here we can see the diffracted beams, these beams which are a little bit rounded. So we can see that each particle from this powder sample having a diffraction dot, a single dot, and these diffractions are so close to each other that they form a continuous line. So here we can study in detail this phenomena. A narrow strip of the film into the short cylinder with the specimen placed, specimen means the powder is placed on its axis, and the incident beam is directed at right angle to this axis. The cone of the diffracted radiation intersect the cylindrical strip of the film in the line. When the strip is unrolled and laid out flat, the resulting patterns has the appearance shown in figure like a rounded lines. Each diffraction line is made up of large number of small spots, and each from a separate crystal particle. The spot lining so close together that they appear as a continuous line, holes for the transmitted line. These holes for the transmitted line, that is the beam entering and beam leaving, and these are the diffracted lines, and these diffracted lines shows that the diffraction are very close to each other. Each particle has a diffraction in the different angle or the different orientation, so they are so close to each other, diffraction is so close to each other, they form a continuous line. The lines are generally curved unless they occur exactly at 2 theta is equal to 90 degree. If they are at 90 degree, then the line will be straight. When they will be straight, from the measured position of a given diffraction line on the film, theta can be measured, and by knowing the lambda, because we know the lambda, the incident beam, the lambda of the incident beam we should know, that is k alpha. And the k alpha has the wavelength that is 1.5 into 10 raised to power 1.5 nanometer. Theta can be measured by knowing lambda. We can calculate the d spacing. We can easily calculate the d spacing. We have a formula for reflecting the lattice planes which produce the line. Conversely, if the shape and the size of the unit cell of the crystal are known, if the crystal you know before that investigation, we can predict the position of all possible diffraction lines on the film. The line of the lowest 2 theta value is produced by the reflection from the planes of the greatest spacing. The planes which have a greatest spacing, the line of the lowest 2 theta. These are the line of lowest 2 theta. The value of the theta is very low, is produced by the reflection from the planes of the greatest spacing. So we can investigate from this. This is the Bragg's law. N lambda is equal to 2d sine of theta, where n is 1 mean we are taking the first order diffraction. So for the d spacing, we have d is equal to a over h square plus k square plus l square under root. This is the d spacing formula for the cubic crystal, because in the cubic crystals we are taking h, k, l or a is equal to b is equal to c. That's why it is very easy, and we are taking it as an example. By calculating the value of d from the Bragg's law, we have substituted the value of d here. So this value become 4a square sine square theta divided by a square plus k square plus l square by taking the square on both sides of this equation. So by taking this h square plus k square plus l square is equal to this, and we know that 4a square divided by lambda square is constant for the given crystal. So we can derive this relation as the h square plus k square plus l square is directly proportional to the position. So it's mean if we know the HKL value, we can find out the position. In the cubic system, for example, D is maximum. When D is maximum mean we know that D depends upon the crystal lattice h square plus k square plus l square. When D is maximum, when h square plus k square plus l square is a minimum, because and the minimum value of this term is 1, corresponding to HKL value equal to 1 0 0 by substituting the value of 1 0 and 0. H is 1, k is 0, l is 0. So we have 1 square in the denominator. Here you can see in the denominator, when these two factors are 0, h is 1, so D is minimum. The next possible reflections will have the value of h square plus k square plus l square, that is 2 in case of 1 1 0 plane by substituting the value of 1 1 plus 0. We can take it 2. Okay, so there are many application of the powder method. XRD basically is a non-destructive technique. Some of the uses of XRD are: we can differentiate between the amorphous and crystalline sample with the help of XRD analysis. We can determine the structure of the crystalline material. We can also determine the orientation of the single crystal, and we can also determine the texture of the poly-grained material. With the help of this measurement, we can find out the strain and the small grain, etc. We can determine the crystalline size with the help of the Scherrer formula, and we can also find the dislocation, line density and X-ray density. There are many parameters which we can extract from the XRD machine. There are some advantages. X-ray is the cheapest, the most convenient and widely used method for the investigation of the crystal structure. XRD are not absorbed very much by the air, so the specimen need not be in an evacuated chamber. Usually we are using the chamber in air, or there is no need to evacuate that chamber for the investigation of the crystal structure, because the X-rays are not deviated by the air. It is collimated, it is straight, it can fall on the sample and expose the diffraction and expose the sample to study the diffraction, to study their different parameters. And the disadvantage of the powder method, they do not interact very strongly with the lighter elements. Thank you very much for your attention.